Welcome to Fretboard Frolics. I'm your host, Mikhal Caldwell. This week's show will be focused on the ideology of Eastern music, how it's applicable to us as Western musicians or from the Western world, and also this show is especially dedicated to a very close friend and an excellent guitarist, Mr. Michael Angelo. Back with more on these ideas after these brief messages.
Have you ever wanted to learn how to make your own TV show? Well, here at United Cable of Oakland County, you can do just that. United Cable offers free classes in single camera, editing, studio production, and mobile studio production. To learn more about these classes, call the public access studio nearest you in Ferndale, Berkeley, Royal Oak, Troy, and Rochester.
Hi, welcome back. As I had mentioned at the head of the show, two very important things to me today. Number one, Mr. Michael Angelo, I like to think a pretty good friend of myself and Mr. Lungu's, my producers. We've had on an occasion to actually talk about some of the things that we have a preference to as musicians and as human beings. Michael Angelo and myself and my producer, for some strange reason, seem to have a close affinity to the Eastern sounds, a very, 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 very internal love affair with the music of the East. When I say the music of the East, I'm not talking about the music from New Jersey or New York or something. I'm talking about the music from deeper east than that, not even farther than Philadelphia. I'm talking about the music of India. Some of the classic reggae, raga. Now those are two different pronunciations, rega and raga. Rega seems to be the term that they use a lot, not reggae, but rega. Seems to be the term that's used a lot in the southern part of India. Raga seems to be the term that's universally known, but it's also spoken a little bit different because it's more the Islamic term. As you know, some of the religious forms, well, actually, this is another topic altogether, but I guess it's applicable to what we're talking about here. Religion in the East plays a large part in the culture of everything. It plays a large part in the actual functioning of that particular continent. A lot of the religious beliefs are the cause of great wars or of great joy sometimes. It's also one of the dividing points of the music in that. You have Balik Rasha, which is more of the western part of India or the northwestern part of India music. This is music that contains 147 tones, which both of the raga systems do. But these 147 tones are used a little bit differently. They have things called Elapsia, which is the sun raga. There's also another raga called Dila Finga. Dila Finga is the pronunciation. It's called the nighttime raga. These are two of the things we're going to be talking about. These are ragas. The reason I chose these particular two ragas, is because they seem to epitomize the total music of that particular country. Now, I wouldn't go out on a limb. You're not going to get me out on that broken limb and make me say, this is the epitome of all Eastern music, because it's far from that. But it seems to definitely epitomize the two great spirits, the great spiritual concepts involved in the making of a raga, and the actual application in these two particular ragas are very, very simple and can be adapted by us as Western musicians and even applied to some of our Western music ideas. Number one of the major things you'll find different is something I really need to talk about. Considering those of you who've been watching the show, if you've ever seen it before, you'll notice this is one of the few times I think we've been on in 3 years. It's one of the maybe 6, no, I'm not even going to go that far. I'll say maybe 3 times in the last 3 years you've seen me play a guitar without a scalloped neck. Why? For some strange reason today, would I do Eastern music with a guitar without a scalloped fretboard? There's a reason for this. This is a guitar I just got a hold of and I haven't had a chance to put the hacksaw to it yet. So give me a week or two and you'll see it done again. But what I'm going to attempt to do today is I'm going to try to use my ideology of what perfect pitch is. Maybe it's a fastball over home plate as far as a lot of people know about a perfect pitch. But I'm going to try to use some of the ideas of tonalities and the appreciation of different tone concepts that I've kind of garnered, and I know Mr. Angelo has garnered over the years. I'm going to try to put this together and use the two ideas of academic procedures to actually get to the tone, and my ears as just a musician or an artist to actually make the tone more appreciable to the people who are listening to this. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is understand some of the relevant points between the Eastern music system with 147 tones and the 12-note music system, which is over here in the West, which is, you know, I have to explain something too. I talked to a few Eastern musicians, a few guys from India who played sitar. One of them played the veena, and this was like 10 years ago. I talked to these gentlemen, and I was thinking, I had a pretty good music education, and I kind of had perfect pitch to what my knowledge of perfect pitch was over here in the West. And I talked to these guys, and they actually thought I was tone deaf. This was when I had already had a master's degree. The guys thought I was like tone deaf because I couldn't hear the other 147 tones. I was thinking everything was either, I was really under the concept that there are no notes between E and F and B and C, which is a fallacy. It's only applicable here in the West, which is like time for the planet Earth. Time only exists on this planet. If you leave this particular atmospheric condition and go to another world, your time has no concept in space. Or even underwater, time doesn't matter unless you count on oxygen. But the only place time is applicable is here on the planet. Time is something invented by man for his own convenience. Sort of like the 12-tone system. It's invented by us Westerners over here because for a few different reasons. Number one, Westerners tend to be very, very lazy. We are a very, very lazy group of people. So it's a lot easier for us to hear 12 tones as opposed to 147 tones. A lot of times you may hear East Indian Arabic music, African music, and hear a guy maybe doing a chant. That's the alphabetical music system. That's very, very, sounds very strange to a lot of you, but actually there was 40 tones in that particular little chant. These are some of the things that lead us to the idea of the construction of a raga. You probably heard 4 tones. I'm sure you heard 4 tones. In those 4 tones, there were 10 different semitonal conditions. This is where the essence of the actual scallop fretboard came in. The first opportunity I had to see a Westerner use it and really use it to the point I was almost stricken with the disease of throwing my guitar out of the window after seeing this guy use it was John McLaughlin in a band called Shakti. He had an actual scallop neck on his acoustic guitar, and I was wondering, why did he do that? And after I heard him play, I realized why, because there was no possible way to get some of the tones on the regular conventional guitar neck. This is not me advocating you guys to go out and find a file and hack up a good Paul Reed Smith or some other $2,000 instrument. However, if you do find an interest in the Eastern music system, it would be definitely conducive to the actual usage of the music system to have a guitar that would be more applicable to that particular technique or style of playing. Without further ado, let's talk about some things that we can relate, even with a 12-tone system, that we can relate to this Eastern music idea and see how we can make things work. 2 examples I'm going to give today is one with a tuning, one of the Eastern music tunings. It's really not so much Eastern music tuning, but it's so much more applicable because it gives you a lot more opportunity to use semitones simply because the harmonic construction inside of this. And when I say harmonic construction, I'm talking about it feels like a diminished concept, but actually it's an augmented concept, or vice versa. Why do I say this? Because we both know that if you take the diminished scale from root and take it up a minor third at the very end of the scale, you will be playing part of the augmented scale. Now, what am I saying? What am I saying? Why does it sound so strange to you? Let's look at this improvement. First, we're going to just take basic American concepts. Number one, I want you to count the notes in this particular scale, and you'll see it's very, very diatonic like most of the things over here in the West. Let's look at this. Now, that's the basic augmented scale. If I take this augmented scale up, I'm actually getting the same feel of a diminished scale, because from this point, I'm actually playing a diminished scale ending. Now let's look at this and play it backwards by utilizing the diminished scale descending. Diminished scale. Now if I take that up a minor third, you'll still have the feeling of an augmented effect. This is some of the things, some of the ways you can invert, or what I like to call cross-breed, because you're actually cross-breeding these scales. You're integrating the scales. You're making them merge together as one idea. This is one of the many possible ways of looking at the playing or the actual utilization of Eastern music in an American, I don't even want to say in an American culture, but I like to say in an American viewpoint so much, yes, because it's not necessarily the correct way to look at things, but if you're going to try to integrate some ideas into some basic things that we're used to over here, you have to have some sort of basis to work with. Now, Let's look at how these scales can be altered to fit our little purposes in this particular incident. What we're going to do is we're going to take, since we already know we're playing an augmented, which is going to give us a major third and a raised fifth, and it'll resolve itself on a natural seventh, we have to also remember that the diminished scale is a symmetrical scale, which means it's an uneven interval count. However, it is a diatonic scale form. So this means that it will fit inside of our basic 8-tone tonality. However, it's an odd number of notes, which will actually mean the diminished scale has 9 notes. Why? Because the notes in the diminished scale, as you'll see on the screen, are this. They come in numbering like this: 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, double flat 7, natural 7, and 8. You'll notice a double flat before the 7, and you'll notice there are also 2 7s here. The double flat 7 is also looked at as a major 6, which gives it validity and also an escape point to merge into the augmented scale form. Think about what's happening here, and I'm going to give you a little demonstration of how we're going to work this out. What I'd like to do is give you a moving chord pattern, which is similar to a raga pattern, very similar as far as chord structure or voicing. However, I'm going to use something that will relate specifically to us as American guitarists. I want you guys, if you have an opportunity, to follow the show for the next 4 weeks, because talking to Mr. Angelo has really inspired me to go in depth on this. So for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be definitely giving you the old turbans and stuff, man. We're going to go straight out on the old flying carpet and play some music that's a little bit different for us here. This is going to be just an introduction or a primer to get to understand exactly how this music functions, what its purpose is, where it comes from, how we can use it, and really how beautiful this music actually is. I want you to take the idea of a diminished chord, and this is very, very simple. And what we're going to do is move this chord around. Very, very simple chord progression, almost elementary, but we're going to make it work for us in a very Eastern American sense. Let's look at this. Okay, in that sense there, just working over the top of that chord melody, we can see a whole lot of things that are available to us there. So the first thing we're going to get out of it, so we're going to look at the augmented scale and how it matches up there. Okay, what we need to look at here is exactly how this can be made to sound Eastern. Let's take a couple examples and look at half-step, whole-step differentials. For example, these are done on semitonal bends. This is also known in raga or Eastern music terms as a 6th tone, the 6th tone in between half steps. You can actually grow to hear these if you exercise your ears every day. You have to adjust your... Think about this, and we'll be back with more after these brief messages.
Perfect bodies are the result of careful planning and comprehensive physical health care for every body that moves. A message from the American Physical Therapy Association.
Hi, well, welcome back. So I mentioned at the head of the show that we have a very special guest, one of the true virtuoso guitar players on the planet Earth and planet Girth and Birth and several other planets we can't mention. Yeah, Mongo.
Pluto.
We had him on the show last year, and since then he's probably only gotten better and faster and more incredible. He has a new album that we'll all get lynched if we ever mention the name.
It's too dirty to mention so far.
So without further ado, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Michael Angelo.
Ah.
What's happening, man?
Just getting ready to release the record and getting ready to go on tour. Everything starts in September.
Ah, okay, you already beat me to it. September what? Early part,
Well,
middle
it's
part?
the first week, because usually that's how they release it. You know, they would say like September 4th or 5th, but by the time it gets in the stores, what, the first week of September.
Okay, first question, same band.
Yeah, well, Nitro is Jim Gillette and myself, our lead singer and myself. We have a new bass player and a drummer.
Names?
But, our bass player's name is Brian, and our drummer's name is Johnny. You know, they're just, you know, young, you know, they're like unknown guys, but real cool, real good.
Okay, second question. Are there going to be a lot of instrumental tunes on it?
No, I do a guitar solo, though. We recorded 17 cuts for the record.
Really?
And yeah, we did the record really cool. We recorded it live. So all the rhythm tracks, everything were done all together. I overdubbed a few solos, but it was like Van Halen 1. You know, so it turned out real cool. And I do a guitar solo called Hey Mike.
Hey, Mike, I like that name, man.
Yeah. So.
Mike, I got to ask you some really, really important questions. Number one, from the last time you were on the show, I got barraged with a million questions about you and your jazz background. I think you blew a lot of minds playing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they think, oh, Mikey can do it. Yeah, I used to play jazz. I mean, I was so into it. That's what I wanted to become, a jazz guitarist. And you know, I mean, I listen to everybody from, you know, I said before, like Django Reinhardt. I used to listen to Wes Montgomery, even George Benson, and the list goes on. I have Joe Pass. I was telling everybody today, I have a picture of him holding my double neck guitar.
Oh, man.
That's where someone. No, I mean, but that was like one of the classic photos. But you know, I realized if you're going to be a jazz guitarist, you have to live it. You have to, you know, that's what you are.
Have a hat like this?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then I just said, you know, I wanted to go into rock. You know, I mean, and I just made the decision. That's why, you know, I stopped playing it. But yeah, most people don't even know. They think, you know, there's a lot more to playing quick, you know, and there's a lot more background behind it.
Mike, you've expanded your musical realms by doing stuff in soundtracks. Are you going to do something in a movie now?
Yeah, I acted in a movie, played a demon in this cable movie, yeah, called Shock 'Em Dead. Yeah, it's funny, and it turned out real cool. It's on now, and then we have a song in the new Hulk Hogan movie. We actually don't have a lot to do with that. You know, they request the tune, and then our record company just says, well, do you want it in there? You know, and if the movie is, you know, if it's cool. If it's not like a low-grade B movie, you know, let's say, yeah, it's cool.
What have you been doing as far as like increasing dexterity? I've noticed you seem like you're playing a little different than the last time I've seen you.
Actually, what I've been doing.
Your wrist used to be like this.
Yeah, it still is for the most part. What I've been really messing around with is just more rhythm techniques. You know, like instead of like my hand usually rests like this. You know, if I'm going to play rhythms, you know, I'll usually, especially for rock, you know, I'll just alter the pick a little bit. But and then I think I just keep, you know, improving on it. You know, I've been listening to a lot of tapes that I did when I was like a little kid too, and it's funny because, you know, here's you, you know, and you listen to this stuff and there's licks that I forgot I even knew how to play, you know, and you bring them back, you know.
You know, we've had some guitarists like on the show recently. Last time we had a really, really phenomenal guy on the show was Larry Coryell.
Oh yeah,
he was like quite aware of the stuff you were doing.
Oh cool, yeah, he's amazing. In fact, one of my buddies that I grew up with, see, I used to play in a jazz band in high school, you know, and I won like the All-State Jazz Award, and this guy was a really great guitarist too, and he was the one who turned me on to Larry Coryell. In fact, he said, and he's from Chicago too, another homie, and he said that he took lessons from him. Now, I don't know this for sure, you know, but yeah, Larry Coryell is awesome, man.
Mike, you mentioned something last time you were in town. You were telling me about the therapeutic value of playing correctly. Could you expound on that a little bit more, like to avoid tendinitis and cramps in the arms?
Yeah. Really, basically what it is, it's a pretty simple concept. You keep your fingers close to the neck. And I was telling today in my guitar clinic, Eddie Van Halen did the cool rock and roll pose, because if you keep your thumb over the neck and you're playing like, you know, I mean, just ridiculously quick stuff, your hand's like this. And what happens is after a while, when your fingers kick back like that, you're going to end up getting tendinitis. So what Van Halen used to do is stand up, hold the guitar like this, and his thumb's behind the neck, and the positioning's right there. You know, I just kept my fingers close. I used to make guitar students stand up against a wall if their fingers hung out too much, you know, to kind of embarrass them, you know. I mean, it didn't do anything for their technique, but it made them look like idiots, you know, so they corrected, man.
Butcher.
Yeah.
You know, there was something you did before that was like really, really amazing. Techniques you did between 3 strings. I noticed you were using, like, for example, a Locrian mode, going like to Phrygian mode, and you were the only guitarist, I told you at that time, that was really experimenting with the augmented scale, mixing it with the whole tone scale.
Right.
Do you still do stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, on the new album, Well, our first album, I guess, it's great because it did really good. So now we're into the songwriting phase, you know, where it's less of, you know, how much can Mikey do, you know, and more of like how cool is the song, you know. But yeah, I mean, I still mess around with that. I still do, you know, tons of arpeggios and stuff. I don't get a chance to do it as much though, especially on the new album. It's kind of like people are going to be shocked because they're going to go, wait a second, this dude can play slow, feeling, you know what I mean? That's more the new album.
Well, I was lucky enough to hear you play a lot of stuff that a lot of people maybe haven't heard you play outside by sitting down talking to you. I wanted to know things you do, like a lot of people mistake the subpaggio things you do for complete arpeggios. I've seen you do subpaggios and mix them with scales. That's a very unique technique to rock.
Oh,
probably
thanks.
I've heard, to be honest, maybe 2 guitarists do them. One of them is Eric Johnson.
Yeah.
The other one is probably Frank Gambale, who's not really a rock guitarist.
No.
So that puts you like in a realm by yourself. What is it you're doing when you're thinking about this stuff, man? You got a very creative mind.
Yeah.
I wonder, what do you do like to get it from here to here, man?
You know what I do? Like, you know, I mean, I have a degree in music, so it's gone so far that I know enough to not think about it. You know, in other words, like, I know the scales, I know the modes, and when I'm playing, what I really do is just concentrate on A, is this in key, and then B, if it isn't, who cares as long as it sounds good, you know? I mean, it sounds pretty simple, but that's it. And I mean, like in jazz, you can get so far outside, like Holdsworth. I think all you really can, you know, all you need to worry about is your first and last note, man. If it starts in and it ends in, everything else in between is cool, you know?
I talked to Tony McAlpine about you, man. He was speaking about you, and he calls your technique the scatter blast technique. Everything on the fretboard, you scatter it and blast it about till it comes back to place. That was like a really high compliment, man.
Oh, cool.
Some of the things you've been doing, like outside of, I listened to some of the things you're doing outside of chords. A lot of people don't really know your chord vocabulary is like deep enough for somebody to drown in. Some of the things you do outside of the chord scales, like I hear you play scales that have nothing to do with the tones, but they relate to the passing tones, the notes in between the chords.
Yeah.
That's like amazing stuff. How do you sit around and do this, man, and still make it fit in rock?
Well, I think that's the secret of playing jazz, too. Outside is inside, depending on how you start and end it. And like guitar's real easy. You set up patterns, you can go chromatically, or you can play along the progressions. Like that's what I used to have to do, like learning solos. You know, you play along with chords, but then you can add in really wild. I mean, I can just sit and play a chromatic lick. All I have to do is end on like a tonic note, or you know, just one note in the chord, and that's really how I get to do it.
One more super technical question I got to ask you. When everybody else was like going crazy with the neoclassical fusion phase, you were right up there, one of the leaders of the march. However, you did stuff that was like really different. I noticed you would do stuff like land on relative tones, not necessarily like the root or the third or the fifth, something everybody plays triads.
Right.
But I noticed you would play like the sixth tone and like use it not as a sixth sometimes. A major six, you play like a double flat seven to get into diminished. Or I'd also noticed you play like a raised fifth, the augmented scale, and use it like a minor six. Use the raised fifth instead of looking at it as an augment, you look at it as like a minor six.
The enharmonic equivalent, yeah.
Yeah, man, that was like really wild stuff. How do you manage to come up with this stuff and still make it relevant to like heavy metal hard drive and stuff? That's like something I've never heard anybody else do.
Well, you know what it is, because everybody thinks classical is minor.
Right.
And see, it's not always the case. I mean, like Mozart, you know, I mean...
Nobody heard of Chopin, right?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it's pretty happy stuff, yeah, and you know, you can make anything work. It's just a matter about how you phrase it and how you... I think that's the thing that made me really realize about jazz. Theoretically, some of the stuff, I mean, it's so complicated that it'd take, you know, weeks just to explain what you're trying to do, but a lot of it, it's just sound, it's just tone, you know, and that's really what I go for.
Mike, I asked you this before. Who are you influenced by? Because it's got to be somebody, man, besides you. Because you're playing from outer space, man. You're playing from outer space. I mean, where are you coming with some of this stuff from? You got to be coming from some different areas, man.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it because, you know, I kid around a lot, you know, with everybody.
You sound like a horn player that wound up playing guitar or something.
It's funny because if I had tapes of what I used to do, I mean, you know, I used to write brass arrangements and all that. I mean, it was, you know, I was really into it. I'd have to say still it's songs, you know what I mean? If I really went back, I used to listen to really outside players, like I would say, like I used to listen to Zappa a lot. I mean, his playing is so far, and he had the greatest musicians. I mean, you know, all these guys, like Chester Thompson's playing with Phil Collins, you know, I mean, all these musicians he played with are some of the best ever. So, you know, just great musicians, you know. But
Mike, could you demonstrate some of the scale techniques you were using before? You showed me some things before, I think. 2-string patterns you were doing before. Different patterns on 2 strings?
Yeah, some of the stuff, like, let's get the Wicked overdrive. Yeah, this is pretty, it's basic, but I mean, modes are, I mean, if you know one major scale, you can play
them all.
modes. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Right.
So, you know, yeah, what I did, I mean, this is pretty basic, like on a... You know, it's pattern playing. What you're talking about before, like... See there, I mixed a little in, a little chromatic.
Yeah.
You know, it just gets a little out there. You know, and like stuff with the 6, like.
Mike, we're going to take a break. Will you come back and play some stuff for us?
Sure.
Be back after these brief messages.
Get government booklets on everything from home repairs to dieting with this free catalog. Just drop a line. Write new catalog, Pueblo, Colorado, 81009.
Hi, welcome back. We've been talking to this guy for the first part of the show. It's very important that you see why we had Michael Angelo back for the second time, to witness true guitar madness and a guy who's so confused you don't know if he's left-handed or right-handed. We'll go on to this part of the show. Here's Mike. If you have any questions or comments for Fretboard Frolics, feel free to send them to us here at Fretboard Frolics, 344 West 9 Mile, Ferndale, Michigan, 48220. Hi, welcome back. Put a slick one on you and had Mr. Michael Angelo for a guest. I thought you guys would appreciate that. That man is a phenomenal guitarist, and the thing that's amazing about him is he's just as good left-handed as he is right-handed. Well, I hope you guys continue on your quest to become world musicians, because you are on the planet Earth, which means we all have to be Earth players, including Mr. Angelo, who demonstrates that very, very fluently. I want you guys to think about the concepts of Eastern music, think about the concepts of just music. Practice real hard, and for myself, Michael Angelo, and David Lungu, I'd like to tell you guys, make the dots dance on it. See you next week.